Picture this. On New Year's Day 2023, millions of Croatians woke up to find their entire monetary system had transformed overnight. The Croatian kuna, a currency that had defined their economic identity for over 3 decades, was suddenly replaced by the euro. But here's what most people don't realize about this massive transition. It wasn't just about swapping out banknotes and coins. This was one of the most complex economic transformations in modern European history, and the story of how Croatia pulled it off reveals shocking truths about international finance, political maneuvering, and the hidden costs of monetary union that nobody talks about. What I'm about to share with you will completely change how you think about currency transitions and the European Union's expansion strategy. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Croatia's euro adoption wasn't just a simple economic decision, but a calculated geopolitical chess move that took over 2 decades to execute, and why the consequences of this transition are still rippling through the Balkans today. Let me start by taking you back to where this all began, because Croatia's journey to the euro is unlike any other country's path to monetary union. Most people assume that joining the eurozone is a straightforward process: meet some criteria, sign some papers, print new money. But Croatia's story reveals just how wrong that assumption is. When Croatia declared independence in 1991, the country was thrust into a brutal war that would last until 1995. During this chaotic period, the newly formed nation needed its own currency, and fast. The Croatian kuna was introduced in 1994, replacing the Croatian dinar at a rate of 1 kuna to 1,000 dinars. The name kuna actually comes from the Croatian word for marten, a small mammal whose pelts were once used as a form of currency in medieval times. This historical connection wasn't accidental. Croatia wanted a currency that represented its distinct cultural identity, separate from its Yugoslav past. But here's where the story gets interesting. Even as Croatia was establishing its monetary independence, the country's leaders were already looking toward European integration. The kuna wasn't designed to be a permanent solution. It was always meant to be a stepping stone toward eventual euro adoption. This long-term thinking would prove crucial in the decades that followed. The early years of the kuna were marked by significant volatility. Croatia was rebuilding from war, transitioning from a socialist to a market economy, and dealing with the massive costs of reconstruction. The Croatian National Bank had to work overtime to establish credibility for the new currency, fighting inflation and building the institutional framework that would eventually make euro adoption possible. What's fascinating is how Croatia managed this transition period. Unlike many other post-communist countries that experienced hyperinflation and currency crises, Croatia maintained relatively stable monetary policy. The central bank adopted a managed float system, carefully controlling the kuna's exchange rate against major international currencies, particularly the German Deutsche Mark and later the euro. This wasn't luck. It was strategic preparation for what everyone knew was coming. The real turning point came in 2013 when Croatia officially joined the European Union. But here's what most people don't understand about EU membership. Joining the Union doesn't automatically qualify you for the Eurozone. In fact, Croatia faced a complex web of economic and political requirements that would take another decade to fulfill completely. The European Union has what are called the Maastricht criteria, 5 specific economic benchmarks that countries must meet before they can adopt the euro. These criteria cover inflation rates, government deficit levels, debt-to-GDP ratios, exchange rate stability, and long-term interest rates. On paper, these might seem like simple financial metrics, but in practice, they represent some of the most challenging economic targets any government can pursue. Croatia's inflation had to be within 1.5 percentage points of the 3 best-performing EU member states. Their government deficit couldn't exceed 3% of GDP, and total government debt had to be below 60% of GDP. The kuna had to remain stable within the European exchange rate mechanism for at least 2 years without severe tensions. And Croatian long-term interest rates had to be within 2 percentage points of the 3 best-performing EU countries in terms of price stability. Meeting these criteria while managing a developing economy proved incredibly challenging. Croatia faced multiple obstacles that threatened to derail their euro ambitions. The 2008 global financial crisis hit Croatia particularly hard, pushing unemployment above 17% and shrinking the economy by over 10% between 2008 and 2014. Government debt soared as revenues collapsed and spending on social programs increased. But what's remarkable is how Croatian policymakers used these challenges as motivation to implement fundamental economic reforms. They restructured the banking sector, improved fiscal discipline, and modernized their regulatory framework. The Croatian National Bank maintained its commitment to exchange rate stability even during the worst periods of the crisis, building the credibility that would later prove essential for Eurozone entry. The political dimension of this process is equally important and often overlooked. Euro adoption wasn't just an economic decision for Croatia. It was a powerful symbol of the country's European identity and its final break from the Yugoslav past. Public opinion polls consistently showed strong support for Euro adoption, with approval rates typically above 60% throughout the transition period. This public support was crucial because Euro adoption requires significant short-term costs and disruptions. Businesses need to update their systems, consumers need to learn new prices, and the entire financial infrastructure must be rebuilt. Without broad public backing, these transitions often fail or create lasting economic problems. Croatian politicians across the political spectrum generally supported Euro adoption, but for different reasons. Conservative parties saw it as validation of Croatia's Western orientation and integration with European institutions. Liberal parties viewed it as essential for attracting foreign investment and modernizing the economy. Even skeptical voices acknowledged that Euro adoption was probably inevitable given Croatia's economic structure and geographic position. The technical preparation for Euro adoption began in earnest around 2018, and this is where the story becomes truly fascinating from an operational standpoint. Converting an entire economy from one currency to another is an incredibly complex logistical challenge that most people never think about. The Croatian National Bank had to coordinate with the European Central Bank to design and produce new euro banknotes and coins specifically for Croatia. While the banknotes are identical across all Eurozone countries, each nation produces its own coins with unique national symbols on one side. Croatia chose designs featuring traditional Croatian symbols, including the Croatian checkerboard coat of arms, the medieval Croatian king Tomislav, and the famous inventor Nikola Tesla. But producing the physical currency was just the beginning. Every bank, ATM, cash register, accounting system, and point-of-sale terminal in the country needed to be updated or replaced. The Croatian National Bank established a detailed timeline for this process, working with commercial banks and retailers to ensure a smooth transition. One of the most challenging aspects was price conversion and the prevention of unfair price increases. When countries switch to the euro, there's often a phenomenon called rounding inflation, where businesses use the currency change as an excuse to raise prices beyond what the exchange rate would justify. Croatia implemented strict monitoring systems and public awareness campaigns to prevent this problem. The government also had to retrain thousands of employees across the public sector, from tax collectors to pension administrators. Legal contracts, insurance policies, and loan agreements all needed to be converted from kuna to euros, according to the official exchange rate of 7.5345 kuna per euro. What makes Croatia's transition unique is the timing. They became the 20th country to adopt the euro at a moment when the Eurozone was still recovering from multiple crises. The 2010 European debt crisis had exposed serious structural problems with the monetary union, leading to bailouts for Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, and Cyprus. Brexit had demonstrated that European integration wasn't irreversible. The COVID-19 pandemic had created unprecedented economic disruption across the continent. Some economists questioned whether this was the right time for Croatia to give up monetary independence. A country with its own currency can theoretically adjust exchange rates to maintain competitiveness during economic downturns. By joining the Eurozone, Croatia was surrendering this tool and accepting that monetary policy would be set by the European Central Bank in Frankfurt, taking into account the needs of the entire Eurozone rather than Croatia specifically. But Croatian policymakers argued that this theoretical loss of flexibility was outweighed by concrete benefits. Euro adoption would eliminate exchange rate risk for Croatian businesses trading with other European countries. It would reduce transaction costs for tourists visiting Croatia, a crucial industry for the economy. It would make Croatia more attractive to foreign investors who wouldn't have to worry about currency fluctuations. And it would provide access to European Central Bank support during future financial crises. The data seems to support Croatia's decision. In the months leading up to Euro adoption, Croatia successfully met all the Maastricht criteria. Inflation was well below the EU average, the government deficit was under control, public debt was declining, and the kuna remained stable within the required exchange rate band. Long-term interest rates had converged with European levels, reflecting increased investor confidence in Croatian economic policies. On the 1st of January 2023, Croatia officially adopted the euro, becoming the 20th member of the Eurozone. The transition went remarkably smoothly from a technical standpoint. ATMs dispensed euros, shops accepted euro payments, and the dual circulation period where both currencies were temporarily valid proceeded without major problems. But the real test of euro adoption isn't the first few weeks or months, it's how the economy performs over the long term. Early indicators have been generally positive for Croatia. Tourism numbers reached record levels in 2023, partly due to the convenience of using euros. Foreign direct investment increased as investors gained confidence in Croatia's commitment to European integration. Inflation remained controlled, despite global pressures from energy and food price increases. However, some challenges have emerged that illustrate the complex trade-offs of monetary union. Croatian exporters have had to adjust to a stronger currency compared to some of their regional competitors who still use their own national currencies. The construction and manufacturing sectors have faced labor cost pressures as wages converged toward European levels more quickly than productivity increased. The broader implications of Croatia's euro adoption extend far beyond Croatia itself. This transition sends a powerful signal to other countries in the Western Balkans about the benefits of European integration. Serbia, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, and Bosnia and Herzegovina are all at various stages of the EU accession process. And Croatia's successful euro adoption demonstrates that full integration is achievable. At the same time, Croatia's experience highlights some of the ongoing tensions within the European project. The country had to meet strict fiscal criteria to join the Eurozone, but once inside, it gained access to European Central Bank support programs that weren't available to non-Eurozone EU members. This creates a two-speed Europe where core Eurozone countries enjoy certain advantages that peripheral countries cannot access. The geopolitical dimension of Croatia's euro adoption is particularly significant given the current global context. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has reminded European leaders about the importance of economic and security integration. For Croatia, euro adoption represents another step away from Russian influence and toward deeper integration with Western institutions. What's also interesting is how Croatia's euro adoption affects the balance of power within EU institutions. Eurozone countries have additional voting rights and meeting opportunities that non-Eurozone members don't enjoy. Croatia's voice in European economic policymaking has been strengthened by joining this inner circle of the European Union. Looking ahead, Croatia's euro adoption may accelerate broader changes in European monetary policy. The European Central Bank now has to consider Croatian economic conditions when setting interest rates and implementing quantitative easing programs. While Croatia represents a relatively small portion of the Eurozone economy, its integration adds another layer of complexity to European monetary policy decisions. The success or failure of Croatia's euro adoption will also influence how other potential candidate countries approach their own integration strategies. If Croatia thrives as a Eurozone member, it will encourage other Balkan countries to pursue similar paths. If significant problems emerge, it might lead to more cautious approaches toward monetary union. From a technical standpoint, Croatia's euro adoption represents one of the smoothest currency transitions in modern history. The Croatian National Bank's careful preparation and coordination with European institutions prevented the kind of chaos that has accompanied some other monetary reforms. This success provides a template that other countries can follow when pursuing their own euro adoption strategies. But perhaps the most important lesson from Croatia's experience is that currency transitions are ultimately about much more than economics. They reflect national identity, political choices, and long-term strategic vision. Croatia's decision to adopt the euro was shaped by its history, geography, and aspirations for the future. The Croatian people chose to tie their economic fate to the broader European project, accepting both the benefits and constraints that come with monetary union. This decision reflects a fundamental belief that Croatia's future lies with Western Europe, rather than as an independent player balancing between different regional powers. As we wrap up this deep dive into Croatia's euro adoption, it's worth reflecting on what this transition reveals about the current state of European integration. Despite all the challenges facing the European Union, from Brexit to populist movements to economic inequality, countries are still choosing to deepen their integration with European institutions. Croatia's successful euro adoption demonstrates that the European project, whatever its flaws, continues to offer compelling benefits to countries willing to meet its demanding requirements. The combination of economic stability, political credibility, and institutional support that comes with Eurozone membership remains attractive even in an era of global uncertainty. The story of Croatia's euro adoption is ultimately a story about transformation. How a country that emerged from war and economic chaos in the 1990s successfully navigated the complex process of European integration. It's a reminder that major economic transitions are possible when there's political will, technical competence, and public support. Whether Croatia's bet on the euro will pay off in the long term remains to be seen. The Eurozone faces ongoing challenges from demographic change, technological disruption, and geopolitical competition. But Croatia has positioned itself to benefit from whatever opportunities emerge while sharing both the risks and rewards with its European partners. If you found this analysis of Croatia's euro adoption fascinating, you'll definitely want to check out my video on how Brexit actually changed the European Union's power structure, or my deep dive into why Switzerland refuses to join the EU despite being surrounded by member countries. These stories reveal different aspects of European integration that most people never think about, but that shape the continent's political and economic future.